Good evening. My name is Kent Wong. I'm the director of the UCLA Labor Center, and we'd like to welcome you to Labor's Voice. This is a monthly program sponsored by the UCLA Labor Center and the Los Angeles County Federation of Labor. This is an opportunity each month for us to learn about cutting-edge issues impacting the labor movement and the fight for social and economic justice. Tonight's program, in honor of Black History Month, will feature three outstanding labor leaders of Southern California who are at the forefront of the struggle for racial justice and for worker justice. And this is a critical time for the labor movement to be addressing issues of racism, white supremacy, and racial equality. And we have no better advocates and speakers on this issue than our guests this evening. We will be joined by Doug Moore, the president of the United Domestic Workers, part of the American Federation of State, County, and Municipal Employees. UDW is one of the largest unions in the state of California, representing home care and child care workers. We will also be joined by Anton Farmby, a leader of the Service Employees International Union, United Service Workers West. USWW secured one of the largest organizing victories of African-American workers in decades during the Security Officer Organizing Program. And they have been at the forefront of building multiracial unity here in the state of California. And we are also joined by Janel Bailey, the co-executive director of the Black Worker Center, the first Black Worker Center in the country, which has served as an inspiration for now a national network of Black Worker Centers from throughout the country. So I wanted to welcome all three of you. I had the privilege of traveling with all three, along with Reverend James Lawson Jr., almost 1 year ago in March of 2020 to Montgomery, Alabama, where we met with Brian Stevenson, toured the Equal Justice Initiative, the Legacy Museum, and the Peace and Justice Memorial to honor the thousands of Black men, women, and children who were lynched due to white supremacy and racial terror. And so I wanted to start with that collective experience that all of us shared together, and to ask how that experience in Montgomery, Alabama, prepared you for the national mobilizations for Black lives that unfolded shortly after our return in spring of 2020. So Doug, I wanted to get your reflections on our journey together.
Thank you, Kent. I'm pleased to be here. I'm actually the executive director of the United Domestic Workers. We have a president, so I wanted to make that correction. That was not the first time I've been there. That was my fourth visit. This one was different because of who we traveled with. Before it was family. This time it was you, Reverend Lawson, Anton, Janel, and several others that made that trip with us. And every time I've gone, I've taken away something differently, especially with Reverend Lawson being there to talk about the history. Not only there, but when we went to the museum, and he had to correct the history in real time as far as what was stated in writing. And to watch him do that lecture, I felt sorry for the woman at the museum, because he just went right to her. I felt sorry for her. But bringing everybody together at that site, I would recommend everyone go there. And the conversations that Brian Stevenson had with Reverend Lawson was a highlight, historic. We got some video footage. I'm sure all of us had our cameras out videoing that. And the young law students that were there in the background, they were mesmerized watching those two have this conversation. What I got from it, not this time, but the last time I was there, my wife actually found her great grandfather and how he was lynched, and we were able to actually find newspaper articles about it. So it's a personal thing when you go there, and then all of a sudden somebody says, does the research, says, that's my grandfather. And there's many grandfathers, many mothers, many grandmothers, children that told the story about why they were lynched for some of the smallest infractions that were not really infractions, trying to organize a union, mouthing off supposedly to a white woman or looking at that person. And that's what's so deep about that museum and the lynching memorial, because it really tells the story that America has never told. And until we start telling that story, we're going to continue with systemic racism. And as you peel back the systemic racism, you see the caste system. And we don't talk enough about that because it still exists. So it's a lot. And I would urge anyone, if you get the opportunity to go to Montgomery, go and take it in.
Thank you, Doug, for sharing not only your personal connection with that experience, but also the power of storytelling, the power of shaping the narrative. And I think that really jumped out to all of us in terms of being moved by the stories that we heard, and the stories that very few people in this country have heard about the true evils of slavery, of lynching, and of mass incarceration. Anton, your reflections on the trip.
Thanks, Kent. Good to see you, Doug and Janelle. There was a lot of takeaways for me from that trip. It's really hard to pinpoint one example or one thing that really kind of moved me. The entire experience was just a little bit overwhelming, and to a certain degree. It was also moving, and to be quite honest, like really frustrating in a lot of ways. Kind of being there, not just at the museum, where I thought was just phenomenal. The Peace and Justice Museum was great. Seeing all of the stories that's being told in so many different visual ways, and audio ways, which was really great. Understanding the history about Montgomery, right? I think that when we're coming up in school, we hear a lot about the Civil War. We hear a lot about racism, but it really doesn't hit you until you're there, right? Just the feeling for being there was overwhelming for me. And then, having the opportunity to see like all of the monuments that represented like all of the folks where the lynchings took place, was just, it was a lot to take in, and really, even the narrative around that on how, they're encouraging folks to claim those monuments. It was one for, almost every county that they had an accounting for, where folks had actually been lynched, and they're encouraging people to claim those monuments, which I think is just phenomenal from a historical standpoint. But for me, to be quite honest, one of the things that kind of just stood out for me, just kind of walking in Montgomery, was kind of being in the midst of where the auction blocks took place, where the actual slave trading literally happened, right? It was something about that that's just, it was just a lot to kind of absorb, right? Being in that same place, in that place, just a couple of generations ago, where folks were kind of, shot up the river, unloaded off the boats, put on the blocks, and families separated, lives ruined, and completely becoming enslaved. That's a strong story to tell and a lot really to deal with. I was really kind of moved by that. And also, on the other side of that, kind of seeing the location where Rosa Parks stood up, literally, right? And was like, this is it for me. With the beginning of the bus boycott in Montgomery happened, right? So there's just so much history, there, and the Confederate White House, where you enter and they give you cotton. I don't know how I felt about that, but it's just a lot there. And I just had I have so many memories. I feel like it was just a couple of months ago. That's just how much it sticks with me, and really have an opportunity to be there, with you, Kent, and Janelle, and Doug, and kind of experiencing it all together. Whether it's like Doug, who've been there a couple of times, or for someone like me, was the first time, I just felt a very strong connection, not just in that moment, but just really thinking about the context of the historical, what Montgomery really the history of Montgomery. It really didn't hit me until I was there. Being there and being with you all, being shared with you all was just really great. And then the one thing that I would just like to just say, Kent, is that, after that trip, shortly after that, our whole lives changed, not because of just that trip, but we entered into this pandemic shortly after. We're talking about days, where our lives completely changed. And even furthermore, the racial injustice that took place over the summer, and folks were speaking out and standing up against that. There was a lot that happened over these last several months. In some ways, it seemed like it was a long time ago, but in some cases, it seemed like it was just yesterday. And so I feel that trip was like that, kind of like the launching pad of what this year kind of encompasses, right? And so I shared my experiences with my children. I have a 11-year-old, I'm sorry, now 13, oh my God, a 13-year-old daughter, an 11-year-old son. I sat them down and just really talked about my experiences. And I promised them we would get down there, because I feel it's important for them to experience that. And it was just a moving opportunity that, that I'll never forget. And I really appreciate being there with each and every one of you.
Thank you so much, Anton, for sharing those heartfelt reflections. And one thing that Brian Stevenson addressed when we were there was the power of proximity, and being in Montgomery and seeing where the slaves were brought up the river and were sold, but also seeing the resistance, seeing the Freedom Ride Museum, seeing the place where Rosa Parks led a bus boycott that transformed this country, was also very inspiring. So we were also so grateful to have you join us, Janelle, and we wanted to get your reflections on the experience in Montgomery.
Yeah, thank you for having me. And I had to say, this is yet another one of those days that has been so amazing to me since I've been part of the LA Black Worker Center. There's a lot of days where I come to work and I'm starstruck, because I'm working with folks who, I've long been inspired by and, read about. And it's just, truly an honor to be across from you. I'll talk more about the Worker Center, but a lot of the work that I was part of in Chicago was inspired by stuff that, that y'all did. But like you were saying, Anton, just being in the space was a trip. And, to see, like right there, that's where the boat dropped off. This is where they walked, and this is where the sail went down. And to understand that it really was not that long ago at all. And to be processing that in real time and in mixed company, honestly, was challenging. Because we went to our own Holocaust museum, but our Holocaust is not over. And that is heavy. That is heavy. So there were so many takeaways from the trip, but one of the big ones for me was really, and not only just from the trip, but really that whole experience. Because remember, I met y'all up. I drove from Mississippi. I went to see my folks. And because I knew that I was going to need to get my mind right before jumping into an experience like that. And really, I think in part served to ground me in who I am accountable to. Not only in this moment, but like in this movement, as we are doing this work, where does it come from? Why are we doing it? Who am I accountable to? Because there's so much that is new but also isn't really. There's some things we know that are exactly the same, like patterns of inequality, and power wants to hold on to power. It will cheat and rob to keep it. It will concede nothing without a demand. Organize people and organize money as power, and we ain't got no money, as David always says. So we gotta have our relationships together. Like, those things are consistent, but no matter how many campaigns or how many organizations you've been a part of, you've never been a part of this campaign at this moment with these people, so that part, is always going to have a bit of novelty. And so I feel like reflecting on everything that went down this summer and everything that we saw on our trip is so important to me to remain grounded and accountable to, and why I'm here.
Thank you so much, Janel, for sharing those reflections. And indeed, it was like visiting the Holocaust in the United States, and to understand the depths of the wounds and scars that are still with us to this day, and dealing with a country that has never come to terms with the ugly history of slavery and white supremacy that is still haunting the very soul of this country to this day. We're going to focus in just a minute on the current pandemic and how your three organizations are addressing some of the racial disparities within the pandemic. But we have a very special guest who I wanted to now introduce, and he'll be joining us with a song. This is Anthony Gates. I first met Anthony when he performed at a Southern Christian Leadership Conference celebration right here in Los Angeles. And we were so inspired by his music that evening that we are so grateful to have him join us tonight. So please welcome musician Anthony Gates.
Hi, everybody. It's a pleasure to be here again. Thanks for having me. I'll go ahead and get it out of the way because I was listening to myself to all of the stories. So I'll make this quick so you guys can get back to it. I was born by a river in a little tent. Oh, and just like the river, I've been running ever since. It's been a long time coming, but I know a change gonna come. Oh, yes, it will. It's been too hard living, but I'm afraid to die, because somebody keep telling me don't hang around. It's been a long time coming, but I know a change gonna come. Oh, yes, it will. Said I go to the movies and I go downtown, but somebody keep telling me don't hang around. It's been a long time coming, but I know a change gonna come. Oh, yes, it will. Said I go to my brother, and I say, brother, help me please. Then he winds up knocking me back down on my knees. Oh, times when I thought I didn't last it long, but now I know I'm able to carry on. It's been a long time coming, but I know, said I know, a change gonna come. Oh, yes, it will. Thank you.
Thank you for that beautiful music, Anthony Gates, and change is going to come. I wanted now to focus on a transition to talk about the current crisis. And we are in the midst of a pandemic that is going on a full year. And the tragic reality is that some communities are at greater risk. Some communities are facing more suffering and more death than others. And the reality is that in Black and brown communities, we have a marked higher number of coronavirus victims. We have higher numbers of deaths, and especially for essential workers, where many Black and brown workers are concentrated, and low-wage workers, we also have a flagrant disregard for their health and for their best interests. And we have 3 leaders here in Southern California that have been at the forefront, that have been advocating for racial justice and worker justice. So Doug Moore, I know that you represent a lot of home care workers, a lot of workers who care for the elderly and people who need medical assistance. And so how has your union been dealing with the crisis of the current pandemic?
Well, our union, United Domestic Workers of America, is one of, just to give you a little background, is one of 3 unions founded by people of color. The first being the Brotherhood of Sleeping Car Porters with A. Philip Randolph, the United Farm Workers, Cesar Chavez, and then you have United Domestic Workers with Kim and Samaji, Fahadi Jeffers, that were the founders. So our union, you know, social justice is in our DNA. So, and racial justice is pretty much woven into everything that we do at UDW. Our members are majority women, about 80%, and people of color, about 60%. And you're right, our members are low wage earners that often live in communities with a higher concentration of people of color. And there are also communities that are heavily policed, that are polluted, and where there are food deserts and hospital deserts as well. And we work to advance racial justice, not just because it's the right thing to do, but because our members face systemic racism every day. Home care work, like all domestic work, has historically been associated with women of color, and as such, has been devalued. So our work to uplift home care providers is also inherently about advancing racial justice, or at least undoing the work and the impacts of systemic racism. But we also do work that is more obviously about racial justice. We have taken strong positions on policing and criminal justice reform. And I don't know if you knew this, but up to about half of all police killings happen to people with disabilities, a majority of whom are people of color. That's our membership. That's our clients. So it's our responsibility. So we sponsor and pass legislation to protect people with disabilities in interactions with the police. In 2019, we were co-sponsors of AB 392, which gave California the strongest use of force laws in the country. And then last year, we helped pass the historic AB 2542, the Racial Justice Act, which gives Californians the right to challenge bias in convictions and sentencing. So we may be a union of caregivers, but we are a social justice union and we're proud of it.
Thank you so much. I've so enjoyed the time that I've spent with UDW, Doug. I am always inspired by your members, by their commitment, by their energy, and by the spirit that just embraces you when you walk into a UDW meeting. And so it is a real testament to what a union can and should do to build multiracial unity and to fight white supremacy. You know, Anton, you work with security officers who are also on the front lines, who are essential workers. And, you know, your union also represents janitors who are also essential workers who are on the front lines. And so tell me, how is USWW addressing the current challenges of the pandemic?
It's a lot there, you know, to be honest, Kent. You know, I want to take a step back to talk a little bit about coming off of the trip, you know, to Montgomery. You know, our union went through a transformation where we had to, you know, make a tough decision on how we were going to continue to be relevant in the lives of our members. And that forced us to think differently about what the union was really about. We shifted all of our operations away from our office and began to have our staff work from home. Now that's a huge challenge, you know, for us and a lot of other organizations to make that shift that quickly. Upon returning from our trip, I immediately jumped into, you know, thinking about what that was going to look like. You know, our trip was like in March, early March of 2020, and we started working from home March 16th, right? And so we did this quick turnaround to continue to be, you know, relevant in the lives for our members. You know, we dealt with everything from the union that shut down to what does this mean for, you know, my representation at work and organizing campaigns. Are we going to continue to be able to fight? Yes, on all fronts, and we continue to do so. Early on during the pandemic, Kent, we had a fight around personal protection equipment. If you all recall, in the early parts of the pandemic, it was this whole notion around don't go buy masks. You're going to buy everything up from the frontline workers, and you know we're still figuring this out. That's just something that we just couldn't accept because our folks had been deemed essential, so they had to continue to go to work. And basically, what you were saying is go to work, but don't protect yourself. And that's just, they didn't fly with us. And so we had fights with a lot of the employers and, you know, for masks and hand sanitizers and really figuring out how we reconfigure the work of a security officer and a janitor and an airport worker, right? And so, you know, we was fighting for quarantine pay. Folks were being exposed to the virus, but yet had to use their own time while they were exposed at work in order to quarantine. And we were like, no, that's not going to fly with us. And so we engaged in a fight around getting quarantine pay, you know, for our members. And then also we had to deal with the notion of the layoffs, right? You know, because our economy came to a halt. And I know that we'll probably get to that a little bit later, but that also was kind of something that we had to deal with, right? And so, you know, it was a struggle in the beginning, but we took those fights on, and you know, I'm really happy to say that we were successful at protecting the integrities and literally the lives of our membership. You know, I think another thing that was important for us at the time was testing. If you all remember, it was tough just trying to get kits and get it off the ground, and we were at the forefront at really voicing our opinion around the importance of testing and working with our signatory employers around making sure that our members had access to those tests and being able to contract trace. So not necessarily finding out specifically who was infected, but knowing if there was someone, we needed to know about it so that we can act quickly to hopefully prevent a breakout at a work site, right? We've had, several instances where we were faced with situations like that. And then I think, like, just thinking about right now, we're talking about the vaccine, right, that came online in record time, right? This is something we've never seen before. Now let me just be honest and full disclosure around the fact that not all of our people want to get vaccinated, right? I can't tell you how many conversations, Kent, I've had with my folk around, I ain't taking that damn vaccine, right? And that's a tough conversation to have, because we're here promoting that, and you have someone that's like, I'm not going to do it. And there's several reasons why they don't want to do it. I mean, some just don't believe in vaccines. Some are a little suspicious about the vaccine, and rightfully so. When you look at the history of the communities, Black folk, people of color, it's not a far-fetched notion, and it's not hard to believe that folks are not excited about taking the vaccine. But be that as it may, we have been at the forefront for pushing for our members to have access to the vaccine, as well as other essential workers like Doug's folks and others, right? And so, it's been a struggle, but I feel very proud, of our union and really kind of making that shift. There's a lot of organizations that was not able to make that shift. There was a lot of organizations who are struggling right now to this moment. Not saying that we're not struggling, but to a different degree. And right now is when you need those soldiers in the fight, now more than ever, right? Because this is not some boss, or this is not an employer. This thing attacks anyone, anywhere, anytime, right? This is a fight that we all must have. And, I'm proud to be in that fight, to be honest with you. This is why we do the job. It's more than just about fighting the boss. But this is really a fight for access, and it kind of highlighted, Kent, a lot of things that we've been talking about for a very long time. When we talk about access to healthcare and people of color communities, COVID highlighted that. The people who are being affected the most is people of color, specifically Black folk and Latino, disproportionately, right? When we talk about communities, and even we have the vaccine online right now, who are the last folks in line to get it? Who should be first, right? We're talking about Black folk, people of color, right? So this pandemic has really kind of unveiled a lot of ugly truths about who we are as a country. And I think that for us, here and the folks in the audience who are listening to this, it's a wake-up call for us, right? It's an opportunity for us to look at, health, access, racial injustice. It's only so much you can take before people start responding. And I think that this is an opportunity for us to rethink how we look at, what's been happening here in this country, and take that opportunity to think differently about, things around racism. One last thing I would just like to say, Kent, is that is just really kind of sticking out for me, when we talk about COVID, that I think is completely related to this, is the notion around folks who are easily kind of led based on non-truths. Whether you're talking about the vaccine, whether you're talking about COVID, or whether you're talking about an election being stolen, right? It's really easy to kind of lay that foundation for folks and lead them down a road that can be very dangerous. We've seen that happen in this country over the last several weeks. I think that that's completely connected to this topic. I don't separate it at all, because there needs to be an honest conversation about integrity, around truth, around justice, right? And that gets lost, and it's packaged in a cute, shiny box, and people buy it and then they roll with it. But I think it's up to us, like, myself and Doug and Janel, who know better, and to do our job and educate our members, along with others, to really tell them the truth, to allow for the opportunity to do things differently in this country that's going to benefit working class people, people of color, and specifically.
Thank you, Anton. The work of SEIU, United Service Workers West, has led in the transformation of the Los Angeles labor movement, and that fighting spirit and that determination continues to this day. And so I know the work that you, that, our good friend and brother, David Huerta, who himself has been a victim of COVID-19, and I know it's been a real struggle for him. But I really want to give a shout out to the courage and the tenacity and the leadership that you have exhibited within this union, fighting for your members, fighting for security officers, janitors, but fighting for racial and economic justice, and to really point to the disparities that exist even in the midst of COVID-19. So I really respect that work. I am so also honored about the work of the Black Worker Center, and to have an organization that was founded and led by Black women through its history. And so Janel, tell me what the Black Worker Center is currently doing with regard to COVID-19.
Yeah, we had a similar journey where, at first everybody was learning what social distancing was and, how are we going to continue our work, as we knew it and be safe. And, we did the only thing that we knew, and that was really lean in closer to the community, not 6 feet, but, just lean in closer as far as, what do folks need and what needs to be done. And so immediately we shifted to figuring out how to do our program work remotely. And so that meant, making use of tools that we might not have used so much before, like the obvious tools like Zoom, but also just regular like phone calls, texts. Like we had to routinize that in a different way. Definitely the postal service, USPS was huge in, figuring out how we were going to start moving our work remotely. And that was just when we thought we were going to be shifting for a couple of weeks. Since the start of the pandemic, almost 85% of Black workers in California have filed for unemployment. That is damn near everybody. That is most of the Black workforce in the state. So as the severity just became more and more obvious to us as more of our folks started getting sent home from work, not even proper laid off, just I got sent home today and we're gonna wait and see. And that is how informal, that's how quickly everything was unfolding and people were being asked to work without masks. And so, we saw that we really needed to begin in a different way. And unfortunately, the misery from this pandemic was so widespread that what it really meant was there were more opportunities for partnerships for things that our folks needed all along. And so we were able to partner with folks to actually be able to do more rental assistance, direct assistance of food. And we partnered with St. John's to in our office before it was more widely available around the county. United Way was really helpful in doing more of the direct assistance. And one of the things that we had to grapple with was there's often this false dichotomy between like services and organizing. And our members, made sure that I just really stepped up and got everybody together real quick on that, just let us know that ain't no organizing if people don't have their basic needs met. How am I going to turn up at City Hall if I ain't ate this morning? So that clarity on how all of those things fit together and driving our program. DeAndrea leads our workforce development program. And like I said, he and her team just really went above and beyond to make sure that they could be present to accompany people while they're preparing themselves, looking for work. The Ready to Work program, that's what it focuses on. It's a leadership program. It's a workforce development program that helps place people into meaningful careers. And the way that our members just really leaned in and stepped up to support each other, I was so impressed, but not surprised at all, because mutual aid is that's in our cultures. That's what Black folks do. And so that's a lot of what, we saw at the start of this and what we continue to see as we are surviving this together.
Thank you, Janel. And I think that one of the themes that has been so strong in all three organizations represented here is this whole notion of building community and really standing together and fighting together. And one example of that, and I wanted to get back to Doug and UDW, is that what's extraordinary about the work of UDW is that they are continuing to grow and to build this union. And I wanted you to talk for a minute about the successful organizing of another sector of primarily women of color and low-wage workers, and that's within the childcare workforce. So Doug, tell me about what's going on in terms of organizing childcare workers.
20-year labor of love of organizing, Kent. Family childcare providers finally won the right to collectively bargain. Then they voted overwhelmingly last year for us to be their union. And when I say their union, it's three of us. It's 5-1, SEIU, SEIU 99, and UDW. So the three of our unions collaborated together, and we represent childcare providers throughout the state. It was a huge win, the largest organizing victory in years. And last year, we worked very hard to protect childcare providers who are frontline workers caring for the children of other frontline workers like healthcare providers, grocery store workers. And ultimately, we were going to use the bargaining process to fix the broken childcare system because it's an old, antiquated system. But first, we needed to protect childcare providers from the devastating economic effects of the pandemic. And so far, over 6,000 providers have had to shut their doors. These workers are the backbone of our economy, and they're being impoverished by this pandemic, and they needed our help. So we got them money for supplies and PPE, protected them from a 10% cut to the child care subsidy program, which is already too low, and made sure they were paid even if children were unable to stay in care, all while starting our first round of negotiations with the state. And we just recently secured our first bargaining victory, a tentative agreement with the state on our COVID-19 needs. And the agreement provides additional funding for subsidized providers for increased costs due to the pandemic to pay for cleaning supplies, PPEs, and more paid closure days due to the COVID-19. Before, if one kid came in and tested and they had to close, or a staff tested, they had to close the facility, no pay. So we were able to get them up to 30 days. And then we have a streamlined process to continue to address provider family challenges due to the pandemic because they're ongoing. Now, our next challenge would be to bargain for a better subsidy rate and policies to help fix the broken childcare system so it works better for everyone who needs it. This is a big victory in terms of representing these workers. Between the three unions, this was a collaborative effort, and I applaud SEIU 99 and 5-1 in this coordinated effort.
Congratulations, Doug, and to the work of all three unions in securing this 20-year fight and this 20-year victory. And once again, there's something very wrong in this country when workers who care for our most precious resource, which is our children, are paid poverty wages, while those who are paid millions and billions for watching their money are privileged. So there's something very wrong in terms of the priorities within this country. As Doug indicated, SEIU is one of the most dynamic organizing unions in the country, but during this past election cycle, they also played a major role in securing the victory of the Biden-Harris administration. And so I wanted to ask Anton about what are SEIU's expectations in this, the first 1 month of the new Biden-Harris administration. What do we have to look for, and what is SEIU hoping to see in terms of a new administration under the leadership of Biden and Kamala Harris?
Well, congratulations, Doug. It's been a long fight, and I, to my brothers and sisters in '99, I know that, it's been a struggle. So it's a huge victory for all of us, so congratulations on that. The Biden administration, look, I think that there's so much to do, just kind of dealing with what has taken place over the last 4 years, right? We talk about the current state of affairs and the political landscape, and we can clearly see that the Biden administration came in and, you know, signed all of these executive orders just really to get back up to snuff, to get the country back on the right direction. And I think we all can agree that governing through executive action is not the sustainable long-term solution, but there was just so much there to address that, you know, I think that was the place that the administration decided to start. I think that there's a lot of issues that SEIU, you know, would like to put to focus on in terms of the administration and the agenda. But for us at USWW, I think that obviously we're an organization and a union of people of color. You know, immigration reform is huge for us. You know, I think that a meaningful, sustainable, you know, a process for people path to become put them on a pathway to become citizens in this country is long overdue. I think that when you look at our immigration system, for some it's been a pretty fairly easy sort of process, and for others they can't even get their, you know, right foot in the door. And I think that it should not be that way. I mean, this country is founded on immigrants, people who come from other countries who have come and made their lives here, and we're generations in. You know, and I think that looking at meaningful, you know, immigration reform is important to us at USWW in our membership. I think also what's important is, you know, criminal justice reform. You know, when we talk about the current state of affairs in this country, when we look at the, you know, the what took place with Black Lives Matter, you know, when we think about the incarceration of Black males, you know, in this country, there's something that's not right. When you look at a group of folks that make up 12% of the population, but make up like 70% of inmates, you know, that is something wrong with that picture. You know, and I think that looking at criminal justice reform also, quite honestly, is an opportunity for this administration to think about some of the, you know, previous, you know, things that they stood for, you know, a couple of decades ago, in order to make that right. You know, I think that it's an opportunity to kind of look at, you know, where would we like to be as a country, you know, in terms of what do we value, what's important, how do we take advantage of an opportunity to kind of equal the playing field, right? You know, and think about criminal justice and the impact in the Black community and people of color communities, right? And I think that, you know, when we talk about criminal justice, you know, Ken, I'm not talking about it from a narrow point of view. I think that there's an opportunity for us to look at it very broadly. There's a lot to be done in that area, whether you're talking about the court system, whether you're talking about police brutality, whether you talk about incarceration, all of those things are interconnected. And I think that there's an opportunity for us to hopefully put some pressure on the administration to really look at that in a way, you know, that hopefully can bring some change. And, you know, earlier today, I saw that the administration was proposing a bill that would put folks on a pathway to citizenship over the course of 8 years, right? You know, I heard, you know, I was reading something on that today. So, you know, I think that there's a lot to do, you know, here. And this admin, it falls on, you know, on us. You know, one of the things that I learned from, you know, a previous president is when we helped get him elected, everyone thought that, oh, the job is done. We got him in. Now you go ahead and make it happen, right? Well, I'm hoping that we learn a lesson from that. No, this is not one man's job. Actually, it's up to us to hold them accountable. And we can't stop our fighting, because the moment we stop that fighting, that's when things start going downhill, right? And so it's a lesson learned from us that, you know, this is just part of the puzzle to get the right people in place, you know, during these elections, and then the work really happens then. It's not that, oh, we get them in and now we can lay back. It's like, oh, we get them in, now what's next, right? How do we hold them accountable, and how do we hold them to stay true to the things that they campaigned on? You know, and the last thing that I would just, you know, like to talk about is just the fact that, you know, we have one of our state's own, right, historic fashion Senator Kamala, Vice President Kamala Harris now, who we all know, right? That's going to, we know, I have no doubt that she's going to be a fighter, and yes, I'm saying she's going to be a fighter. I have no shame in saying that, there in DC, and that's what we need, right? But yet and still, I still hold true to the fact that we still have to hold her accountable. We cannot let our foot off the pedal off the gas on that, because there's a lot to be done here. So, from USWW's perspective, thinking about our membership and thinking about the communities that our members live in, those are some of the things that we think are important to tackle within this administration.
Thank you, Anton. And SEIU and AFSCME both played such a critical role in the November election victory. And it was truly a coalition that brought together the labor movement and communities of color to secure this victory. And so I'm really glad that Anton talked about the need to continue the fight for criminal justice reform, for racial justice, and for immigrant justice, and that we cannot rest, even though we have new leaders in the White House and in the House and in the Senate. Janel, we're so excited that the LA Black Worker Center was the first in the country, but what we're equally excited about is how it has inspired the formation of other Black Worker Centers, even right here in Southern California. So can you tell me about what is going on with these new Black Worker Centers?
Sure thing. So the LA Black Worker Center was the first in California, but there is a Black Worker Center in North Carolina and Rocky Mountain that has been going since, I believe, 1987, either 86 or 87. But yeah, just had to give a shout because, we have, such long traditions of Black worker organizing. I'm super excited about the new centers that are coming up out in the Inland Empire and down in San Diego, just because, well, for many reasons. But when you look at the patterns of where Black folks are at right now and how folks are unfortunately being displaced out of Los Angeles, one of the top places that folks are going to is out to the Inland Empire. And so as we think about what it means to build Black power, as I was alluding to earlier about organized people and organized money, if we are serious about being able to shift conditions for Black workers in California, we need to have power on that scale. And so if you look at where Black folks are in the state of California, 60% of us are in Southern California. And so that is here, i.e. in San Diego. We need to build a more unified agenda as well. So that's something that we can lift up, not only in Sacramento, but like I said, right here at home for folks. And I think another important part of it is demonstrating what is possible for other parts of the country, really showing what it looks like for us to come together on this scale and address our problems in a regional kind of way, because we have, Black worker centers in DC, in New Orleans, in Chicago. There's actually a couple that are coming up on the East Coast in Pittsburgh and Raleigh. And I think what is next? What is next is, out the field. And so if you were to think akin to, for example, the immigrant rights movement, where you have a beautiful ecosystem of lots of different organizations that can provide lots of different ways to build power and provide services and lift folks up. We need to be able to hang. We got power together. There's so many Black folks who are born outside the United States that aren't necessarily reflective and not really the face of the immigrant rights movement. And so I think that, there needs to be space for that. I think that, really needs to be space for all of us together. And so that means building up Black power, not only for the benefit of Black folks, but so that all people of color can come up together. And so I think building in a region is one of the strong ways that we do that.
Thank you so much, Janel. And we're excited about the new Black Worker Centers in the Inland Empire and in San Diego, and this emerging national network of Black Worker Centers. We're going to be calling back Anthony Gates for a closing song. But the final question that I wanted to pose to each of you, and just need a 1-minute response, is what is the call to action? For those who have heard this program tonight, for those who have been inspired about the work of these three organizations, what would you like to leave the viewers tonight in terms of a call to action, something that they can do to help create change? Doug Moore. You're on mute.
I would say this, to recognize the value of all work, especially care work. Home care work is incredibly difficult, and our society is living longer, so people are aging. And so this work is going to continue to have, it has to have value. It has to be recognized as valuable work. And it's not easy work. It's hard work. And it takes people with a big heart in order to be able to do that work. But we also want people to stand up when they see injustices. Don't be standing on the side and watching. Get involved. You know, get involved. When you see injustices, do something about it. You know, we always say, if be part of the solution. Don't be the problem, be the solution. So at UDW, we are really looking inwardly at our organization. We're looking at our membership. And what I didn't say to everybody, we have no work sites. All of our members work in homes. So organizing during a pandemic was very interesting, but we were able to pull it off. And also find purpose. Find purpose in your life and support other workers, because all work has value. Thank you.
Thank you, Doug. All work has dignity. Anton, what is your call to action tonight?
My call to action, Kent, is just to let folks know that we're planning, along with our partners and allies, a march on March 11th, which would mark like the 100th day of the administration. You know, this new administration kind of coupled with the Women's Day March, right? You know, we're working out the kinks, we're getting it all together. We're hoping that folks, you know, will join us. You know, we'll have more additional information to come, but we're getting our voices out there. And when we talk about that accountability, Kent, this is what we're talking about. You know, so March 11th, you know, a March Day of Action for the 100 Days of the Administration / Women's Day March. Also, I would just like to ask, kind of coming off of what Doug is talking about, is to kind of, when you come across or see an essential worker in your travels throughout your day or wherever you're going, I would highly suggest that you thank them. You know, these folks are literally on the front line every single day, risking their lives to ensure that yours is okay. You know, so I would just highly suggest that when you see a home care worker, whether you see a grocery store worker, a janitor, or a security officer, you know, if you was to be so kind to say thanks for everything that you do, you have no idea how much that means to them. They're dealing with their own struggles, but to see and know that there's someone else that recognizes and sees them, I think goes a long way. So thank you very much, Kent.
That's great, Anton. Let us all thank our essential workers for the work that they do every day, and join the march on March 11th. Janel, call to action.
Call to action, I believe we are streaming on Facebook. So if you are watching us in a browser, I'm going to invite you to hit Control-T, get that other tab open so you can still hear my voice while you type in lablackworkercenter.org and sign that petition. So we're calling on the mayor to hire 1,000 Black folks to provide essential services in the city of LA. So while the city heals from the pandemic, Black folks need to share in that prosperity. And so our coalition is called 1,000 Strong. And so there's a coalition that we are in with SEIU, with AFSCME, with the LA Federation of Labor. We're working together to make sure that, like I said, Black folks get to work. I told y'all almost 85% of Black folks in the LA workforce have filed for unemployment. So again, that's on our website, lablackworkercenter.org. Please sign that petition so that we can stay in touch and let Mayor Garcetti know what it is. And my extra ask, as I see everybody slipped into, my extra ask is to wash your hands and keep your mask on. That's really it, to be perfectly honest, because a lot of our folks, like I said, have been moved into the informal economy. They're not in workplaces necessarily where we have access to, protection of union membership. And so this is kind of all we got, and the best way that we protect each other, we show Black love is through community care. And so continue to wash your hands, sing whatever song you want to sing for 20 seconds and put your mask on, put your nose inside your mask.
Thank you, Janel Bailey, 1,000 strong, hire Black workers. And now for our closing song, I'd like to once again welcome Anthony Gates.
I almost forgot what I was going to sing. Processing information and listening to you guys. So, yeah, it's been a pleasure and wonderful listening to everything you guys have going on. Yeah, so here we go. I've had some good days. I've had some hills to climb. I've had some weary days and some sleepless nights. But when I look around and I think things over, all of my good days outweigh my bad days, and I won't complain. Sometimes the clouds hang low, and I can hardly see the road. I ask one question, Lord. Why so much pain? See, He knows what's best for me. Although my weary eyes, they can't see. So I'll just say, thank you, Lord. And I'll just say, thank you, Lord. And I won't complain. God has been good to me. He's been so good to me. More than this whole world or you could ever be. He's been so good to me. He dried all of my tears away, turned my midnights into day. So I'll just say, thank you, Lord, and I won't complain. Thank you.
Thank you for the beautiful music from Anthony Gates. Wanted to thank our speakers this evening, Doug Moore, UW-AFSCME, Anton Farmby, SEIU-USWW, Janel Bailey from the Black Workers Center. And I also want to give a shout out to Hugo Romero, Chris Jang, and Sylvia Vasquez for helping to put together this segment of Labor's Voice. Join us 4 weeks from tonight on Thursday, March 18th. We'll be celebrating Women's History Month with 3 dynamic, nationally recognized women labor leaders, leaders of the Coalition of Labor Union Women, the Asian Pacific American Labor Alliance, and the Labor Council for Latin American Advancement. So that will be 4 weeks from today, March 18th at 7 p.m. Thank you again to the LA County Federation of Labor and to the UCLA Labor Center for Labor's Voice. And we'll see all of you again soon.